In this 6-part video, I talk about how we can use our daily life experiences to meet the two biggest challenges of our time: exponential change and increasing diversity. Change is happening faster and faster, making our old modes of thinking obsolete. So we need to learn to relate to each moment as the surfer relates to the ocean waves, being in constant relationship with the ever-changing now. These 6 segments are excerpted from a speech I gave in 2008 at the International Conference for Business and Consciousness. The title of the speech was Surfing Chaos: 6 New Human Capacities for Navigating Change. So I hope you'll listen to all 6 of these programs, but if only 1 or 2 interest you, they are edited so that each segment stands alone. Thanks for watching.
Today we're going to be working with a number of life skills that will help you be more resilient and responsive in the face of change and chaos. Ever since I can remember, I've been interested in the question, why do we have to wait for a crisis in order to change? When so often, I think, if we tap into our deeper wisdom, we can sense the early warning signals that indicate that some kind of a change is going to be necessary. So to help us frame this inquiry today, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever been surprised or blindsided by some crisis, and then later on you realized, gee, there were signals that would have shown me that if I had just listened to these things, I could have taken action much earlier? Now, the most obvious example of that is hearing the words, "You're fired," or "I want a divorce." But I can think of other examples too, like my computer hard drive just crashed, or if you just have a heart attack or a health crisis, or perhaps you find out your mate is having an affair. These kind of things, there were signals before the crisis. So the question that I've been working with for a long time is, why don't we pay attention to these things? Now, I've been a consultant to organizations and communities for over 35 years, and I've been watching, especially in the last 10 or 15 years, how some people seem to be able to be more responsive and make changes before the crisis knocks them over, whereas some people just always wait till the last minute, and even then, like they don't want to see the handwriting on the wall. So I've been looking at what distinguishes the people who are more change responsive to the ones who wait and wait and wait. So that's what I want to be looking at with you today. Before I talk about what I've learned from talking to leaders and managers, I want to tell you some of the things I've learned from my experience as a blue water sailor, because much of what I learned about dealing with crisis and chaos have come from my experiences sailing the world's oceans for several years of my adult life. So I want to give you one example that is kind of dramatic for me and always reminds me about how to pay attention versus just getting knocked over. Here's the scene. It was a calm and balmy day as our little sailboat scudded effortlessly from Mexico to French Polynesia. We were down near the doldrums, which is near the equator. And in the doldrums, a lot of times there is no wind. That's why they call it the doldrums. So just as we'd been entering the doldrums for a few days, because you can be there for days and days, the wind died down to almost nothing. So we decided, the captain and I, there were 2 of us on this cruise, that we would put up the spinnaker. The spinnaker is that big billowy sail that goes out in front of the sailboat. And it was going to be my job to tie the sheets off on the yacht's central mast, while the captain took the spinnaker pole and positioned the sail out in front of the boat. So I'm just about to do my task here, and all of a sudden, an unexpected gust of wind comes up from out of nowhere. And just as I'm about to tie off the sheets to the winch, the sheets are pulled off of the winch, and the only thing holding that big spinnaker sail from falling into the ocean was my two bare hands. So I have a choice to make in that moment. What do? Do I admit that the wind is clearly a more powerful force in this instance, or do I hang on? Well, what do you think I did? For a while, I hung on. I hung on until I was about 10 or 15 feet up the mast, until I finally got it that this is happening. Because I'm saying to myself, this can't be happening, this can't be happening, at least in the back of my mind. This is the doldrums. Things like this aren't supposed to happen in the doldrums. It's supposed to be calm or no airs at all. So finally, I recognized my plight, and I let go, and I dropped to the deck. And I had some rope burns and some burns on my knees, but basically I was okay. And then I could deal with the predicament of making sure the sail didn't get destroyed by the boat driving over it. So what did I learn from this situation? The one thing that I keep learning over and over, and I pay a special attention to after this incident, was you can think what you want to think about how things are supposed to be and how things should have been and how you expect them to be. And then there's what is. There's the actual reality of the situation. So since then, I've been even more interested in how the mind gets in the way of perceiving reality. And I think now it's possible to prepare ourselves to develop some skills that will make our minds more responsive to what's actually going on, so that we can participate with the change process, so that we can feel the change process as it's happening, rather than just thinking, okay, here's a change, now I have to deal with it, and here's another change. Because as I said in my write-up for the brochure here, change isn't what it used to be. And change keeps happening faster and faster. So we need new evolutionary skills. I think the fact that so many of us feel off balance and out of control and too much to do, you know that feeling? There's more information coming at me than I can possibly handle. The fact that so many of us feel that is a major evolutionary driver pushing us to another stage of consciousness, a stage of consciousness where we more quickly and in the moment are perceiving our current reality, rather than the mind thinking, okay, this wasn't supposed to happen, and so being caught in that. And you know, there was one other thing going on too on that sailboat, and that was the captain and I had had a conversation that had been disturbing me about an hour earlier, and I hadn't cleared the air with him. So that was another thing that was on my mind. See, when your mind is clogged up with information that's not relevant to the present moment, you're less resilient. So these are some of the skills that I want to begin to help you develop. Ways to clear things that are in your mind so you can be right there in the present moment. I think basically there are two cultural diseases that have gotten in our way in preventing us from being more responsive to the changes that actually need to happen. One is our cultural addiction to control. That idea that we feel safer if we know the outcome or if we know what's going on. Admitting that we don't know something is not that easy for a lot of us. And the other cultural disease is what I call pain phobia. That idea that most of us grew up with, that if we're in pain, something's wrong with us or somebody's to blame. So that the little pains, the early warning signals of an impending health crisis, for example, the little aches and pains, those kind of things, or the little pains in a relationship or in a work relationship, those things we push out of our mind. There's a tendency to not want to feel pain because we have some old, really outdated and dysfunctional beliefs about pain. So I'll be working with you on how to expand your capacity to feel feelings, including unpleasant feelings, because this is going to be very important if we're going to surf chaos instead of trying to manage it. See, I use the image of the surfer as a way of helping me tune in to what this new game is really about. The surfer, the good surfer, is in immediate and constant a feedback relationship with his or her environment. And you almost feel one with, I've done body surfing, I haven't ever been able to stand on a board too long, but when you're surfing, from what I hear, you're just at one with your surroundings, including the wind, including the water, including the board. And that's the way we want to go through life. We want to be able to just be one with our surroundings in every moment, whether it's a relationship, whether it's information coming over the internet, whatever is coming at you, being in a whole different relationship to that than the thinking, predicting, controlling mind can do. So that kind of mind needs to be expanded. And the skills that I'm going to be dealing with today with you will help you expand your mind so that you won't be quite so dependent on that, well, what's happening now, and having to process it through your data management system. So I want to give you a little quiz that has to do now with the first skill that I want to help you develop. And that first skill is called experiencing what is. I'll be giving you a handout at the end that summarizes all this. But right now I just want to be with you. And here's a 7-item quiz. And I'll ask you the question, and you can just think in terms of how often this is true of you. I ask people in the book here, I ask people to rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being not very often, I don't do this very often, and 5 being I do this pretty often. So here's the first question. I often find myself thinking about what I should do or should have done. So just think, am I closer to a 5 on that or a 1? Okay, how many people, I'll just get a little show of hands to start warming us up here. How many people would say, I often find myself thinking about what I should have done? Okay, thanks. Here's another one. I like to think of reasons for or theories about why people do what they do. I'd say I'm a 5 on that. You don't have to be a 5 to raise your hand, but anywhere from 3, 4, 5 on up, give yourself, raise your hand. Here's another one. I have an inner critic that won't quit. I don't have that. 6. 4. I often find myself comparing what I'm doing now to how things were in the past. I do that for sure. See, we're watching the mind at work here. 5. I tend to measure what's happening now against how I wish things were. Let's see, show of hands. And 6, this is the last item. If I start feeling something too intensely, I have ways of cutting off those feelings. So just notice now. So these, if you answered like 3, 4, 5 on a number of these are evidence that you have trouble just being present to what is. So I'm going to give you an exercise now that will help develop your experiencing what is muscles. You're going to find a partner, but before you do that, I want to give you the instructions. One of you is going, let's see, I'll give you 2 different names here. How about one of you will be freedom, and one of you will be commitment. Okay, I like polarities like that, okay? So freedom first will just look and feel and sense, and commitment will ask the question, what are you experiencing? So I'm going to jot down our instructions here. Commitment will ask, what are you experiencing? Or what are you, let me say noticing is another synonym for experiencing. What are you noticing or experiencing? And to me, your experience is What you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you can sense with your sense of touch and hot and cold. It's also, in this case, the way I'm using the word, what you notice about your thoughts. But you're taking the position of the noticer. So you're not identified with your thoughts. You're not saying, right now I'm in a bad mood. That's identifying with your feelings. You say, right now I notice. And you say whatever you notice. Like you might notice the words, gosh, I'm in a bad mood. So notice, like in the game the other night that we played. How many people were there and played the game with me? In the game the other night, we were noticing our self-talk so we wouldn't be identified with it. All of these tools that I'm going to be giving you are tools to take a step away from identifying who you are as your ego mind, the one that tries to protect and defend and know and be right, safe, certain. See, because I think we're making a huge paradigm shift in what it means to be a fully functioning human being, away from the need to be right, safe, and certain. That doesn't work anymore. We're moving into being real, unique, and open to surprise. So these tools that I'm giving you are in that direction. So simply being open to what you are noticing. So C will ask, what are you experiencing? That's commitment. And freedom will say, I notice my hands are cold, or I notice my neck is tense. It will be what your sensations are, what your emotions are, and what you see outside. You might say, I notice you're smiling. You can notice the other person too. So you're basically noticing what's inside, what's outside, and what's in your head as the noticer, okay? A lot of people think this is a really boring exercise because the mind likes to be interesting and significant. What I want you to practice here is being simple and basic and in touch with just the plain reality. We all need training in that now. We've gotten way too smart.